All right, folks. Hey, I want to introduce Super Q. I met Quincy Long here about close to 12 years ago.
A long time ago.
It's been a long time ago. I was out in Las Vegas and had heard about Roth IRAs and the uniqueness of them. And at the Wind Hotel in Las Vegas was an event that was put on, and Quincy Long was a presenter out there, and he and what was that fella's name that put it on?
Oh, I forget his name.
Oh, you forgot his name? I did too. but Quincy did a session on UBIT. You know, UBIT.
Yeah.
UBIT is actually your friend if you learn how to use UBIT in a Roth IRA, and that's unrelated business tax. But it allows you to pay the government and put a large amount of money into a Roth IRA that's seed money to do other transactions. And so he educated me on UBIT at that event, and I was so impressed with Quincy. Every time I get an opportunity to hear him speak, I'm blessed. And him and I have hung out for years, going to various places throughout the world and various seminars. And I have to say that I was a contributor to making him look like Walter from Breaking Bad when we shaved his head.
Breaking Good look.
made him a little bit better looking fella.
He shaved his head. Why?
Oh, why? Well, let me tell you. On our cruises, what we do is we always have a charity event, and you get to pick the presenters, or there's an event, charity that's chosen, and we benefit it on the cruise, and we donate things, we bring things, and we offer various perhaps services. And Quincy was up for his charity, and Quincy and his wife haven't been blessed with any natural-born children, and they adopted, and he is a component for bringing families together that would not normally be together through adoption. And so his charity was for bringing children together with parents, and gift of adoption. And what happened was we were getting close to the end, and somebody said, well, Quincy, we wasn't raising enough money.
That's right.
And and because we had a goal of at least $10,000, and I think we were at what, 5 or 6?
Not enough.
Not enough. And so somebody said, well, what would you do, Quincy, if we got up to 10,000?
Shave your head for $5,000. I said, you crazy. I'm not going to shave my head for $5,000. He said, shave your head for $10,000. Yeah, that's right. And so I said, all right, I'll shave my head for if you raise at least $10,000 for my charity. Well, $16,000 later, I was bald.
It happened in about an hour and a half to 2 hours time spring.
140 screaming people.
Nobody posted on Facebook or anything until I tell my wife.
Yeah, he can't. She made the mistake of letting him come to an event without her.
That's
and
right.
Now she
Next time there's going to be a good big Q tattooed right here on.
Yeah, we're teasing him. He's going to get a tramp stamp or a Q on there. But ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present Quincy Long. He is a unique individual that you will grow to love. He's my favorite dork.
Oh, gee. I guess there's no flipper on this. Actually, let me get a clicker real quick. Where's my bag? Oh. I think it'll run smoother if I have a clicker, so I don't have to hover near the thing. I don't like hovering unless you're a good-looking.
Do you remember which cruise that was, or what month it was, what year it was?
That was the Halloween.
Video of it. I just need to find it.
That was the October to early November
2000s.
cruise of 15. Okay, so what I decided to talk about today, after hearing JB's, turn it on, Quincy. Okay, after hearing JB's talk at the beginning and thinking about what things would be most useful for you to hear, I thought, why don't I just go talk about the Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
Anybody remember what the Ferrari was? Inherited Roth IRAs. So that's what I decided I would go ahead and chat about. And there's a disclaimer, and you all read it good, okay? So before I get on to the thing, I like to talk about the effect of taxation and how it affects your building of your wealth, right? So if you had $100,000 and you were in the 35% bracket, does anybody remember the good old days when that was the top tax bracket? Anybody? Wasn't really that long ago, right? Unfortunately, it's no longer the top tax bracket, is it, Sandy? But if you had that and you can get a 10% return, is anybody convinced so far with the presentation so far that you could get a 10% return on your money?
Yes.
In fact, could you get more than that?
Yes.
Okay, but 10%, let's just assume that. If you had invested that $100,000 outside of the context of an IRA, of course, every dollar you make, you'd have to pay how much to the government? 35 cents, and that reduces not only do you have to pay the taxes, but you pay an opportunity cost, don't you? Right? So if you calculate that up, the account would grow to $661,436.62, which is a tax loss as compared to the IRAs of over $1,083,000. What do you guys think? Is that a good idea?
No.
But if you put it in a traditional IRA, of course, you would accumulate $1,744,940.23, according to Bob's calculated spreadsheet, by the way. Thank you, Bob, for that. Then you would have to pay 35% of that to the government, and you would end up with $1,134,211.15. That's certainly better, right, than 610. So it's an improvement. So there is value in traditional IRAs. That's not what we're going to talk about today, but there is value in traditional IRAs. But with a traditional IRA, part of the money actually belongs to the government and not to you. Of course, if you invested that same amount in a Roth IRA, you get to keep all of the money, all $1,744,940.23. So I always like to throw that up there because it's a good thing to get a relative view of the value of the accounts. Does everybody appreciate that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go on. So we talked about inherited Roth IRAs. And I just wanted to throw up, I'm sorry, Walter's not here to give me the crap, so good for me. I get to talk about rules. So one of the curiosities about inherited IRAs of any type, and certainly that even includes Roth IRAs. Now I know you've heard that you don't have to take distributions from a Roth IRA, and that's generally true, unless it's inherited and you're not married to the person who died. Okay, everybody follow me? So we have to talk about Roth IRA distributions only from inherited accounts. Now, if the account beneficiary is a non-individual beneficiary, well, you know what that means. That means all the money's got to come out of the account by the end of the 5th year following the date of death. So if somebody dies in 2017, by the end of 2018, 20, 19, 20, 21, 22, by the end of the next year, because you don't have to, by the end of 2022, you'd have to have all the money removed from the account. So does it sound like a non-individual beneficiary is the best way to go? No, it really doesn't. But if you're a very nice little feature is if you were the surviving spouse of a person who died with a Roth IRA, normally you have to take distributions from a Roth, right, if you inherit it. But if you're married to the person, you were the sole beneficiary of that, and the person died young, you don't have to take those distributions until that person would have turned 70 and a half. So for example, I had a friend who had his wife was dying of terminal cancer, and she had a few months warning. And I said, man, you got to set up a Roth IRA for her. And he did for 2 years, for the year before and the year that she died. He set those IRAs up, and now he has an account that because he was married to her now, that's the key. He has an account that he can draw money from, tax-free, penalty-free, anytime he wants to, or he could just not take any withdrawals until she would have been 70 and a half. She died at 56. That's a pretty nice thing to do. But normally, individual beneficiaries basically have to take distributions on their single life expectancy. And so I'm going to show you that in a minute. But basically, if you want to know how long you have to live, all you have to do is go to the back of publication 590B, and there's a nice chart that tells you how long you're going to live. And that's your life expectancy factor, okay? So normally, that's the way you figure it out. You go to the chart, figure out what your life expectancy is in the year after they died, and reduce it by 1 every year. That means reducing it by 1 every year simply means that by the end of that period, whether you survived that whole period or not, the account is distributed. So with a Roth IRA, you get to have the tax-free building and distributions for your life, the life of your spouse if she inherits it, and the life of the person who's left to that's not a spouse. That's a total of a lot of years that these things can accumulate tax-free. Do you agree with that? Yeah. So anyway, that's just some things. So how do you calculate the amount you're required to take? Well, spouses generally go to that table every year and just recalculate it, so they get a benefit. If you're a non-spouse, individual beneficiary, you go back to the table one time in the year after they die, and you get the life expectancy factor, and you reduce that by 1 every year. And then you take that factor and you divide it by the balance at the end of the prior year to calculate the amount. Now, I'm just going over these rules really quick so Walter doesn't accuse me of staying in the weeds, and I want to be able to answer your questions. So a lot of people get to the question of taxability. You have heard that Roth IRA distributions are tax-free, right? Everybody's heard that? Yes. That's why you want to be there, right? Right. But they're tax-free if they're qualified distributions or in some other situations. So we'll talk about what a qualified distribution is. A qualified distribution is if you the person who had the Roth IRA, had a Roth IRA somewhere established for your benefit, not necessarily the one that the money's being drawn from, but somewhere you had a Roth IRA at least 5 tax years prior to the distribution. That's always a requirement for a qualified distribution. But there's a second requirement, and you have 4 choices to meet the second requirement. The most common one, and the one that everybody's familiar with, is if you're over 59 and a half, right? So if you've had a Roth for at least 5 years and you're over 59 and a half, that's a qualified distribution. You don't have to worry about anything. It's tax-free, penalty-free, no muss, no fuss, no problem, right? Right? One of the other excuses is you're dead. Now, it kind of sucks for you, or maybe it doesn't. But whether it sucks for you or not, you're dead. Your heirs they benefit from a waiver of that second requirement. It's not a waiver, it's a qualification. So a dead person, if they have had a Roth IRA for at least 5 tax years, right, then it's a tax-free qualified distribution. So, for example, I have my daughters both inherited a small IRA recently, and he opened the IRA in 2016, was the first tax year he opened it for. So they have to take they have to take a distribution from that account, not this year because he died this year, but next year. Now, is that going to be a qualified distribution? No.
They haven't had theirs.
Because he didn't have, it has nothing to do with them, it all has to do with him. since 2016 was the first year that he had a Roth IRA contribution, that is not a qualified distribution. Everybody understand that? So if it's not a qualified distribution, is it taxable? No, it's not. Because, see, that's the thing. That's why Walter accused me of going in the weeds, that you got to understand the rules, right? And I'm really trying to rush through these, I realize, but I'm hoping to prompt questions later. But anyway, no, it's not going to be taxable because at any time, for any reason, you can remove your regular contributions to a Roth IRA, no matter what your age is, no matter what your excuse is. So until they eat up that regular contribution, which was $500, there's not going to be any taxes, right? No, it's not a qualified distribution, but there's no taxes because they haven't eaten through the regular contribution. Does that make sense? So what do I want to do when I have an inherited Roth IRA? First of all, I better know whether or not what's the first year that person who died and left it to me had a Roth IRA, huh? Right? Because if it's been at least 5 years, well, we don't have to worry about anything. We don't have to worry about what's basis. We don't have to worry about anything because it's a qualified distribution and it's tax-free, penalty-free, and everything's good. If they hadn't had it for at least 5 years, we better know a little bit about this account, right? We better know a little bit about the first year they contributed and how much their regular contributions. And if they did a Roth conversion contribution, we better know about that too, because that'll also come out tax-free, is the Roth conversion contribution. So if you decide to go down the path of obtaining an inherited Roth IRA, the Ferrari, as we called it earlier, great. Know some rules. And I only touched on them ever so briefly here, but you get the idea that you need to be in the weeds a little bit to understand the rules? Okay, so beneficiary designations. This is critical, okay? Yes.
Is there somewhere that you know that you can go and read like all the rules about it? Because
Certainly.
Yeah.
The IRS
The
publication
inherited.
590B explains all these rules in excruciating detail, which I've
Is
summarized.
it like something that's easy to understand?
No.
Okay, so is there somewhere that's easier to understand that?
Well, you could always call me anytime, Emily.
Okay.
What about if you're on disability?
Okay,
and
that's
you're-
not going to qualify to make a contribution. What are you asking?
What about a withdrawal?
Okay, disability, well, yes, if you're totally and permanently disabled under the rules of the IRS, that's a qualified distribution too, provided you've had it for at least 5 years. But we're talking about
But you
inherited.
still have to have it for at least 5 years.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
But we're talking about inherited Roth here, so that wouldn't have any effect on an inherited Roth. Okay? So, anyway, beneficiary designations are really, really important to making your plan work. So remember what I said is that if it's a non-individual beneficiary, how long do they have to take out the money? 5 years, right? Is that what you want when you're trying to set up as a legacy an inherited Roth IRA? No, you want to be able to have the thing go for many years. That's kind of the whole purpose of setting that legacy up. Do you agree? So you got to watch the non-individual beneficiaries. So, for example, I'll tell you the pathetic story of my life, okay? My father worked real hard. He was a professor of English at Ohio State University, and he died and left about $500,000 in an IRA. And he left, his intent was to leave 80% to his wife of many, many years, and 20% divided amongst the three of us boys, right? That's a great plan. No problem. That would have been awesome if I'd have got, the amount for me was $29,100 or so, okay? So that would have been awesome. You agree with that? I mean, frankly, I expected nothing, so $29,100, hey, that's cool, Dad, thanks, right? the problem was that what Dad did is he thought, well, my will says that my wife gets 80%, my kids get divided 20%, so I'll just put estate of Terry Long. Guess what? Estate of Terry Long is not an individual beneficiary. So I, being in a high tax bracket, instead of being able to take it over my 42 years or whatever of lifetime I had left when he died, I had to take it out within the 5 years. So he trapped me into taking income in a year in which I had a very, very high rate of tax, and therefore reduced the gift from what could have been $800,000 worth of revenue had I just done hard money loans out of it, down to $29,100, which is a lot better than nothing, but the beneficiary designations are very, very important for you to understand. The other thing I want you to know is...
Excuse me, couldn't you have disavowed it if you didn't like it that much?
Go ahead, ask the question in the mic.
I want here to hear the rules. Go ahead.
Go
Couldn't you
ahead.
have disavowed it if you didn't want the income?
Yes, you can disavow or disclaim your IRA if you want to do that. Yes, you can. So the other thing about beneficiary designations that I want you to know is that if you have more than one beneficiary, they can divide the account after you're dead. Okay, so if you have 3 kids, you don't have to set up 3 beneficiary IRAs, because they can just divide it after you're dead. Now that may be awkward depending on it is, but you can do that, so that's an important thing. Walter knows somebody who has 22 beneficiaries, don't you, Walter?
They had a big family.
Yeah. And they all happen to be in our group. I don't know how that happened. I'll let Walter tell that story. But you can divide them after death. And as far as the test as to whether all of the beneficiaries are individual beneficiaries, the test is done on September 30th of the year after the date of death. So anybody that dies this year has got to determine whether all the beneficiaries are individuals or not by September 30th next year. So if you leave part of your estate to a charity, say Veterans Path Up or something like that, that's great, but you better get the money out of there before September 30th of the year following the date of death, or all of the beneficiaries have to use the 5-year rule. Got it? So now I'm going to quit talking about the rules, but instead for Walter harassing me, so go ahead, Walter. I don't think people really want to hear your question, Walter.
Thank you. So let's just say that there were 8 people who inherited a Roth IRA.
Let's just say there were 8 people, yes.
Okay.
Individual?
And so before you split them out, could you make an investment?
Of course. The investment can be made at any time for any reason. There's no reason you can't do that.
Well, who is going to be making those decisions? Who among the 8 would make the decision of direction?
Well, they would all have to make the decision if it were left together. What typically happens is after death, you simply split them apart very shortly after death, and then everybody goes their own way.
But you could, if everybody agreed, make an investment.
You could, but it wouldn't make much sense. Now, what you could do is make investments before the person died, right? And then when they died, there might be an investment that's divided out. But typically, if it's in cash, you would not bother to make an investment after the death occurs, because you want to get it divided out as soon as you can. Okay?
Thank you.
Now, what happened is before Martin came along, he has one now, is that right? Martin does?
Yeah.
Before Martin came along, Hattie Wofford was the youngest beneficiary that we ever had who has an inherited Roth IRA.
Seasoned.
What's that?
Seasoned.
Seasoned Roth, yeah, so seasoned. Remember what we talked about, if it wasn't 5 years, we call it a Roth where the person who died had had it for at least 5 years, a seasoned Roth IRA, a seasoned inherited Roth IRA, or even non-inherited is still seasoned, meaning the 5-year period has been met. So that was a pretty good gift to give his granddaughter on her 5th birthday. So you everybody, would you like to have that? Third? What did I say? Oh my God, 3rd birthday. Now the only problem is somebody has to die to have an inherited IRA. And Walter told me confidentially that it takes a lot longer to smother somebody with a pillow than it looks like on TV, so. I told you that? Yeah.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Remove that from the tape.
By the way, my daughter inherited one at the age of 18 on her birthday, but I should stop telling the earlier story, don't you think? Wow. Okay, so to give a demonstration of how the calculations are done, let's assume that Sam inherits a Roth IRA of $100,000 at age 6. That means the next year on his birthday, he'll be age 7, correct? Right. So what you do is you have to look at the life expectancy factor and take the prior year in balance, in this case $100,000, divide it by that life expectancy factor, and that's the required minimum distribution for Sam to take. Everybody got that? Yes. Okay. So let's say that the $100,000, his life expectancy from the table is 75.8. So if you divide $100,000 by 75.8, he has to take a distribution that next year after the date of death of $1,319.26. Any questions about that?
Is the 75.8 really 81.8 you throw off his age 6 now?
No, his age 6, he starts taking at age 7 the next year.
Okay.
So I don't know what you mean.
Well, where did this 75.8 come from?
Well, that's what you look up in the IRS.
I understand the table, but
That's the life expectancy.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
so he has 75.8 years left to live.
Yeah. Sammy has
So he has 75.8 years left to live, not age 75.8.
Right, no, 75.8
That's what I was
years
trying
left to live.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay, so everybody see how simple that was? Okay, maybe not.
No, I see how simple. I just have one simple question, Quincy. In the case that there is an inherited IRA that's there, and the person that's got it inherited, does Quest, for instance, or should any custodian keep track of when that distribution is required, or is it up
That's a very,
to?
very good question. Everybody hear his question? No. If there's an inherited account, and should Quest keep track of when that required distribution is due?
That is the question, right?
Well, the answer is, as a customer service issue, perhaps. Okay. As a legal issue, they are not required to do so. Now, what is required is, if you call and say, I need my RMD, we're supposed to calculate it for you. There's no obligation to notify you that it's due. You have to know the rules.
What happens if the person is just
Good
that
question.
doesn't know?
If the person doesn't know and doesn't take it, they are penalized 50% of what they should have taken when for that tax year. They have to file a penalty return. 50% of what they should have taken. That's a pretty hefty penalty.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So everybody understand the first year, right? And this is a copy of the table. And you can see he inherited at age 6, but the next year by December 31st, he has to take it. So that's age 7. That's your factor. Sammy reduces it down by 1 each year, which means in the next 76 years, whether Sammy survives 76 years or not, that account is distributed. Everybody got it? If Sammy lives 60 years and then deceased, can anybody inherit that account? Sure, but they don't get to restart the clock. It runs out in 76 years. Got it? This is just the weedy stuff. So let's assume that he can get 12% on his money. Is it possible, Bob, to get 12% on your money?
My average is 16.5.
His average is 16.5, but let's just assume you could get 12, okay? So at the end of the first year, remember, he's got to take the distribution by the end of the year after the date of death. So let's assume he started with 100,000, and if the person died in 2016, by December 31st of 2017, he's got to take his first distribution, right? So if you can get 12% on your money, $100,000 times 12% is, well, $12,000. So the account would go from $100,000 to $112,000, but you got to take $1,319 out. Everybody see that? Yep. So that means he starts his second year with not $100,000, but $110,680, and divides it by the prior year factor minus 1, and so on and so forth. So if you look at that table, you could detect very quickly that as the account ages, if you are beating the gains, the account is doing what? Growing, not shrinking. Matter of fact, if you can maintain that 12%, the account would grow for all but the last 8 years of the account's existence. Yeah, Jesus is right. That's right.
Why the last 8 years?
Because if you divide 12% into 100, it goes in about 8 times. Because you're always trying to beat the, that assumes you take the minimum amount of distributions. Okay? So I know. So what is that account worth? And we're talking about, this is part of a bigger class on legacy, right? Because when you're trying to set up an inherited IRA, convince the grandma or whatever to set one up, you don't want to be talking about, hey, you're dead and I can get all this tax-free money? Do you want to do that? No. What you want to do is you want to talk about what's the legacy that they want to leave to their family. Is that correct? And when you're talking about legacy, you say, how much is it worth in tax-free income to Sammy? Let's suppose that he could get only 6% on his money. Is that possible, Eric? Can you get 6% on your money?
Yes.
Yeah, in fact, you can get more. But if he got only 6% return on the money over Sammy's lifetime, it would be worth, $2 million. Is that enough to have your picture on the mantelpiece? What do you think? That would be pretty good, wouldn't it? Could you get more than 6%?
You get it above the mantle.
Well, what about that? What if you could, well, let's say, just for fun, let's say you could get 12% consistently for 76 years on all the money. What do you think? What would the number be? More. What? $80,496,000 tax-free dollars. Is that worth doing? Yeah. What if you had really clever parents and could get 18% and for all those years? What do you think? Okay, $3,420,454,810. Now, who wants an inherited Roth IRA now? What's the value of these things, right? It's enormous. What's that? You want the 18%. Is it possible to get 18%, Bob? Yep. It is. Compounding is right. The problem is it's harder and harder to get that as you get more money in. But let's just assume you can. Now, what's the point of this slide? Is the point of this slide you're going to get $3.4 billion tax-free to your grandchild or something? No, Charlie, that's not the point of the slide. The point of the slide is two things. One is that yield matters a lot. And non-payment of taxes matters a whole lot, too. Do you agree with that? That's the basic point I'm trying to get across. Could Congress change rules? Sure. So how do you get one of these? That's what Walter wants to tell you about. We've already discussed having an elderly grandparent or a person that, whatever, that, yes, I'm sorry, Mo.
Good question. So somebody that inherits a bunch of money
Okay.
without having to pay taxes on it,
Right.
It's
Lucky?
the limitation was 5.4 million without having to pay taxes, right? This is excluded from that, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again?
So if
You mean the estate
I pass
tax?
in my estate, right?
Well, that's part of your estate.
Right. So is the remainder, if somebody grows an account hypothetically for $3 billion or what have you,
Well,
will they
sure.
eventually will have to pay on everything past 5.4 or what have you?
Well,
or is it
is
because
part
of this
your
account?
estate. If you have an IRA when you die, it's part of your estate. So it's part of the estate of whoever left it to you. And if that's not taxable, it's part of the estate of when you die with $3.4 billion. But remember, the $3.4 billion is you're taking money out of it. So it's not going to be $3.4 billion. That's the total distributions over the 76 years. But yeah, it's part of your estate. What do you want me to do about that? I'm sure Trump is going to just eliminate the estate tax sometime soon anyway, don't you guys think?
I hope so.
That would be fine. And then never mind, I want to go into that. So I am sure you have a question, Walter, and it's probably a legitimate one.
Have you heard, not necessarily any of your clients, but what is the most anyone has ever accumulated in a Roth IRA account?
How much is the most anyone has ever accumulated?
Yeah. Just what you've heard about. No, a Roth, a regular Roth.
You know, I don't know, Walter. I've got
100
12,000
million?
plus accounts.
I wasn't talking about your accounts. Have you just
Oh,
heard?
I've heard many millions of dollars. In fact, I just heard about one that was over 16 million just yesterday or the day before. But it can be many millions of dollars. I think I know where you're going with this, Walter.
It's just a
I
question.
have heard this guy named, he used to run for president one time. What was his name? Oh, yeah, Mitt Romney. And it was said that at one point it was in excess of $100 million. Now, his was not a Roth IRA because he didn't listen to me. But, you know, you get the point. This is powerful stuff, is it not? Yeah. So now that everybody wants one, and I've enticed you, Charlie, you want one now too, right?
I have one.
You have a Roth IRA. You don't have an inherited one.
I inherit.
All right. So how do you get one? Well, you talk about legacy to elderly family members or whatever, right? And you explain to them the benefits of going out of this world with this to the U.S. government. Can you get that on tape? Now you see, to me, that's worth doing. If I was sick, dying in bed, and somebody said I could do that, I'd go like, sign me up, baby.
Probably say the same thing.
What?
The IRS agents probably would say the same.
They probably would, because it is following the rules. One of the big mantras that I have as a person is, don't abuse the law, but use the law. If the law allows it, it's moral and non-fattening and all that stuff. So I say use the law when you can.
Congress created it.
Because Congress did create it, that's right. So talk about with elderly family members about setting up one, or as Walter has suggested to his mom, peeling off part of her traditional IRA, converting it to a Roth and leaving it to the 3 boys, or the 2 boys, whatever it was. 3 children, right? What about that? Peel it off. Say, Mom, you've got $100,000 in your traditional IRA. Let's peel off $3,000, put it in a separate account, convert that account to a Roth. I'll pay the taxes if I need to help you out. And then my kids will inherit $1,000 each in a Roth IRA.
So you would do it collectively in one IRA or 3 separate?
Well, once again, as I said earlier, you can do it in one and split it after death. Okay, everybody get the picture? Which is an excellent idea, Bob. Excellent idea.
So my mother did do that.
Okay,
My dad left 100,000 traditional.
okay.
And so I asked my mother, she said, sure, I'll do that. And the reason she did it was she wanted to see during her lifetime what her kids would do with it.
There you go. So you're getting the idea of the conversation? As we drink more this evening, you'll have a better and better idea of how to do that. Come on, Walter. Hand over the mic.
Can you have more than one inherited Roth?
Yes, you can have as many inherited Roths as you want, as many people as you can convince that you are worthy of having being a beneficiary. You can have that.
Looking at Paul and saying, so what's the benefit of me at 54, 5 years, if I'm right, 5 years before I touch the inherited IRA? What would be the benefit of my father starting an IRA
Okay.
Me being the beneficiary? Or would I just be better off for my father to open it and put my 4 daughters
Okay.
and just
so
don't even worry about me at all?
So first of all, I would never worry about you. You're too rich to worry about, okay?
Yeah, okay.
All right? So, what's the benefit to him of getting his father to start a Roth IRA now when he's going to be 59 and a half in 5 years? Well, the sooner you start a Roth IRA, the sooner you get the 5-year qualification clock going. So that's the first part of the answer. Then the next part of this question is, should they leave it to me? I mean, I'm 54 in 5 years, I'll be 59, soon after 59 and a half. Does that make any sense? Well, here's the way I answer that question. I would prefer, if you're really setting this up with knowledgeable people, then I would prefer to have you as a primary and then your daughters as contingent beneficiaries. Then you can always waive your right to that IRA and let it go down to your daughters, and you still maintain control in case the daughters go off and marry, bikers like.
Democrats, I might have a Methodist.
They can marry Democrats, or they can marry some dude with a log cabin in Arkansas. I mean,
Good.
So does that make sense?
Yes.
But really, most people are not that sophisticated. Most people would set the daughters up to inherit it directly.
Okay.
Okay, got it?
Yeah, that way I'm still having control.
Yes, Randy.
So if an elderly person sets up an inherited IRA, don't they have to have earned income
Yeah,
to?
good question. Yes, the person that sets it up does have to have earned income, or their spouse, if they're married filing jointly, have to have earned income. But how hard is it to create earned income? Did we hear a presentation not that long ago about how you could create earned income? What was that? How can you do it? Airbnb. You get a 1099.
What if they're too old for that?
What's that?
What if they're too old for that?
Too old for what?
So, wait, hold on. Just finish what you were saying. I think you're getting there.
Leave old people alone.
Go ahead. Too old for what? Too old to rumba?
So you're saying you just have to pay them? Like if I started an Airbnb, I just have
No,
to
no, no,
pay
no,
them?
no, not at all, hon. If you have a house and you let it out for Airbnb and you get your 1099 at the end of the year, it's a 1099 miscellaneous, which means it's business income, which means you have to file a Schedule C on your tax return and report it as business income. Business income is something you can use to contribute to a Roth IRA.
Whether they manage it or not.
Whether they manage it or not,
All right, explain that to me later.
all right. Yes, Bob.
That's a good point, Quincy. Where'd you come up with that?
I don't know. It's some brilliant guy I know.
So this brilliant guy I know, Quincy, taught me. My mom's 83. She opened up a Roth IRA last year. She has no earned income. I'll let Quincy tell you what he told me to tell her.
Well, I don't remember what I told you. It was probably about the fact that if you have a traditional IRA, you can always do a Roth conversion. There's no requirement to have active income if you're converting a traditional to a Roth. Does that make sense? Yeah. Thank you for that, Bob, because I really... Yes, I'm sorry, what?
And speaking of the traditional to Roth IRA, when you're 83 years old and have no income, you can do what they call the Roth conversion ladder, right? So you effectively, no, not backdoor, a Roth conversion ladder, which you effectively create a Roth out of your traditional and never pay taxes on it because you're underneath the marginal tax bracket.
Of course, if you do a Roth conversion, you have no income, although shame on you if your relatives at 83 have no income, because you should be taking better care of that, right?
Right.
But if they do have no income, you can convert up to the amount that is the personal exemptions and all that, and never pay taxes. Right. True. Okay, well, we have to move on a little bit, unless y'all want to be here all night, because I love talking about inherited IRAs. So if you don't have an elderly family member that either has a Roth IRA or can create, or either has the income or their spouse has the income, or that they can create it through some other method, who else can qualify to help you out? Well, if somebody's not feeling well, they might be a good candidate to set up an IRA because you never can tell when they might expire. For example, my friend whose wife was dying, she had several months of notice. She knew she was terminal, so she had the opportunity to set up inherited IRAs. One thing that Walter will tell you is, do you need to be related to the person you're leaving the money to? What do you guys think? No. I mean, my daughters inherited an IRA from some person, and they thought they'd never met this person, but he thought they were wonderful children and deserved to have an account that's inherited to do whatever they need to with, right? That is nice, isn't it? We'll have to talk more about that a little later. Maybe somebody's depressed.
That's bad, Quincy.
Perhaps Walter suggested joining an end-of-life support group. You can get some friends there.
Well, you gotta be compassionate.
My own personal suggestion is get to know the inmates at Huntsville, Texas.
How do you get earned income out of those guys?
Well, their spouse must probably work to pay for things, so,
Cigarettes?
you know. You know, you got to be creative here, people. Yes, John?
So does passive income count or not?
No, passive income does not count. It has to be active income on which, what we mean by active income, mostly it means something you pay Social Security or Medicare tax on. That's the type of income you're looking
So
for.
if you've got stock accounts paying you.
And stock accounts don't count for anything.
You know, I have had a grandmother that had a lot of wisdom, and there were times that I asked for consulting of her. If I paid her for that consulting, would that be considered active income?
Yes, JB, she reported and paid active income taxes, and you had, but look, I don't want to get into an extended discussion of how you can create active income, not on tape anyway, okay? We're just going to skip that topic. There are many ways to create active or compensation type income, and we're going to leave it at that, JB. Yes, any other questions? Okay, so that's step one. That's step one, is you got to have somebody who sets up an account, a Roth IRA, that you or your children or whoever are going to benefit. Step two, well, it is an inherited IRA, right? So that's step two. Somebody has to kick the bucket. Step three is play the song, Celebrate Good Times. Come on.
Wait a minute, say that again?
Okay, so I suck at dancing. Well, nobody found that amusing. I don't know. Celebrate. Okay, so you open a beneficiary IRA. Does everybody get that?
Yep.
Now, what can you do in a self-directed IRA? Self-directed inherited IRA, all the same thing you always do. Real estate, notes, options. Did we hear anything about options in here?
No.
That's it.
What?
You can do options? Really? What else can you do? All kinds of things, okay? Joint ventures and a whole lot more, right? So, here's an example of somebody who, one of our clients, who had an inherited Roth IRA from her father. She was in her early 40s when she inherited the account. And her father left her a Roth IRA with some money in it. And in 2008, I know, great timing, right? In 2008, she spent $68,000 to invest in a house in Central Ohio. I know, don't laugh. It's really an awkward thing to do, Charlie, in 2008 to invest in Central Ohio, trust me. But 10 months later, she sold it, or I'm sorry, a year and a half later, she sold it and netted $100,535. Net profits after all expenses was $19,831, and that's tax-free. Whoa, tax-free. Now wait a minute. Because this was an inherited Roth that had been seasoned, meaning her dad and her had had a combined total of at least 5 tax years, She could call me up and immediately say, oh, hey, Quincy, I made $19,800. Will you write me a check, please? What would I have said? Sure. Would that have been completely tax-free? Yes. Wow. So if you have an inherited Roth IRA and you do a deal and you make a bunch of money, you mean to tell me that you can get the money out tax-free, penalty-free, anytime you want? For the rest of your life? Do you think Miss Hattie Wofford has a good situation there if her daddy and her grandpa help her invest that account so that they can pay for her college or anything else completely, utterly tax-free? What do you think? Is this a legacy you want to leave to your children or grandchildren, or you want to explain the benefits of to your relatives or your friends who are dying or whatever? Is that something you need to have a conversation with them about? Yes. What do you guys think? Is this a good talk?
Yes.
All right. So I got to thinking now, my daughters have $500 accounts. What the hell am I going to do with $500? Whoa, what if I could get 10% on that $500? Well, I'm going to make 50 bucks. Yes, tax-free, 50 bucks. Is that worth anything?
No. Yes.
It's worth 50 bucks, right? But what is it? Does that make any sense? I mean, Walter, you said your mother peeled off $3,000, converted it to a Roth, and left it to your kids, right? What's she going to do with $1,000 each? Can you really make money with $1,000? What do you need to succeed with a self-directed inherited Roth or any self-directed IRA that doesn't have a lot of money? You need you need the account, first of all, right? Then you need the knowledge of the rules. Did I convince you of that with my ever so brief description of the rules in the weeds before Walter got here? Because I was trying to rush through it to get him out of the way. All right? But do you need to know the rules a little bit? Yeah, you really do. You need to know the rules at least a little bit. You need to understand the basics of taxability of the distributions. You need to know qualified distributions. You need to know prohibited transactions, disqualified parties. There's a little learning curve to it, right? You guys would agree with that, right? Is there anybody you know of, Walter, that trains people regularly on rules and stuff like that?
That'd be you?
Oh, well, Quest IRA has a lot of free education on that topic, right? So, and if you go on one of the Financial Friends Network cruises and feed me 2 glasses of truth serum, wine. It gets crazy in a hurry, doesn't it, Walter? But do everybody understand that? You do need knowledge of the rules. The second thing you need is money. But do you really need money, Walter? No, you don't need money. What you need is access to the money, right? You need access to the money. You also need deal flow, don't you? But do you really need the deal flow? Or do you need to know somebody who has deal flow? Have you all heard from anybody today, or will you hear tomorrow from people who have deal flow? Yes. Then the next thing you need to know is you need to know the techniques for investing, right? You need to know how to invest. That's part of it. Because what I was thinking of the other day, I had this epiphany as I was driving back from Dallas. I said, why do some people succeed with self-directed IRAs and others do not? It's because they don't have all 4 of these elements, do they? What if you don't have all 4 of those elements, Emily? Can you benefit from self-directed IRAs? Yes or no?
Save money on taxes? Yes.
Yes, how?
Save money on taxes.
Save money on taxes? Well, that's a good attempt at an answer, right? That's true. That certainly helps. But what do you think? Can you succeed, Randy? What do you think?
Absolutely.
How do you succeed?
Have your network.
That's exactly the correct answer. you have to have the network, right? If you don't have all four of these elements, you don't need all four of these elements if you have the proper network. J.B. Banning said it correctly. Your network is your net worth, right? So if you have a small account, you have to be creative. If you're not creative, you have to get with other people who are creative. Walter, is there anything in Financial Friends Network that would help a person succeed with an inherited Roth IRA?
Well, sure.
Well,
Deal
sure.
flow,
Deal
knowledge,
flow,
money or access.
Money, access. Everybody getting the point here? Okay, good. So I decided to come up with some ideas to give you some techniques. I'm not going to teach you how to do every dang thing in the world, right? But I wanted to throw some examples up there, some real examples up there of techniques you could use, because that's the fourth element, isn't it? You have to know investing techniques. So one of them is assignments of contract. Anybody ever done this before? How many people have done assignment of contract? In Texas, we now know you can do that without a license, provided you provide disclosure. That's very helpful. I don't know how many other states have decided that by statute, but Texas did. So I'm really grateful for that. So let's give you an example. Real example, a person had basically a burned house, and they wanted to get rid of it because the homeowners association doesn't like burned down houses in their subdivision, right? So it was a pain in the butt. They had decided to take the insurance money and run, right? So they did. They left the subdivision. They were just trying to get rid of the house. They were willing to sell it for lot value. So they entered into a contract with the Coverdell Education Savings Account to sell it to the Coverdell for $5,500. The Coverdell, of course, had to pay the earnest money. That was $100. And then once the owner of actually the daddy of the girl who had the account, went around and to all of his friends at the real estate club and says, anybody want to buy a burned house? Somebody said, sure, I'll buy that burned house for $14,000. And so they negotiated an assignment fee of $8,500. And 30 days after the earnest money went out of the Coverdell Education Savings Account to secure this contract, the deal closed, and they made an 8,400% profit. Now, wait a minute. Is that more than 12%?
I think that's bigger than what Bob does.
Okay, do I make my point here? Now, let me just state for clarity, I'm not a big fan of doing a whole lot of flipping or wholesaling or assignments of contract. That is not the best way to generate money because it might be accused of providing services. It could be unrelated business income tax. There's all kinds of things that get words like flipping, wholesaling, or assignments of contract out of your vocabulary when you're talking about your IRA, okay? Instead, use words like joint venturing, investing, that sort of thing, because that's what you're supposed to do with the self-directed IRA, is invest it, not donate your services, right? You're supposed to make good investments. Is it illegal to make a good investment that you made $8,000, 8,000% off? No, but it has to be an investment. Could you get away with once or twice? Sure, to build the account up. Would I do it consistently? I would not. So I'm not a big fan of doing this, but it is a technique that people use. Next idea, options. Options, we like options, don't we? I don't know what that means. Laura's doing some hand sign. Oh my God, I need more drinks.
It looks a little kinky to me.
I'm into kinky, so. Okay, so options. Let me give you an example, real example. The guy was going around and he saw an ugly house that had the weeds and it was abandoned, and he thought, man, I don't want to buy that in my IRA. I could buy it cheap, but I don't want to buy that in my IRA. Why not? Liability. Right. But with an option, do you have to own the property? If you have an option on the property, do you own it?
You have the right, but not the
You have the right but not the obligation. Does that sound like a good position to be in for an IRA?
It does.
So he put an option on the property, and for $100 out of his account, and the option price was $9,000. Does that give you and it's not in Jackson, so it's not a mansion as it would be in Jackson, right? But that gives you some idea of the quality of the property, right? Not very high. But what I discovered many years ago is that no matter where a property is, somebody either has to or wants to live in that area. They may have family there. They may just not have a lot of money. For whatever reason, just because you wouldn't live there does not mean you should not make that investment. You have to be prepared to deal with it. But I learned that many years ago, and that's another story that I'm not going to tell right now. So within a few days, he was driving home, in fact, after he posted his sign on the yard, and he started getting calls on this thing. And within a week, he sold it for $18,000, exercised his option for $9,000, and made a $9,000 profit right away. And I would say $8,900 profit on a $100 option fee is pretty good, wouldn't you?
Not bad.
Not too bad, right?
You could also finance that $8,900.
You could finance the $8,900, but anyway. So options are another thing. Can you get options? Where did Walter go? He just left? Wow.
I think he went to mix a drink, just to be honest, but that's.
Well, okay, so can you get an option? Maybe you can get an option. Well, you know what? I'm not going to go extensively into options because that's a whole nother conversation. You can create options, though, for relatively small amounts, especially if they're part of a bigger deal, right?
Are you talking again tomorrow?
No.
You're not?
Well, in Q&A and stuff like that. And the more truth serum I get tonight. I took a nap this afternoon, so time to party. All right, come on, we got to move on, people, because.
All right, yeah,
Okay. Idea number 3, flipping. Did I use an evil word there? Yes, I did. For it should say investing for rapid returns or something other than that, right? Flipping is. But one of the things about unrelated business income tax, which is another topic we're going to talk about in a minute, is the business activity has to be regularly carried on. So could you not make an argument, you might lose, by the way, could you not make an argument that if you did one flip, that's not regularly carried on and shouldn't be counted against your IRA?
Yep.
I think you might be able to make that argument, you know what I mean?
At least for one.
And again, would you succeed? Maybe, maybe not. What are the chances of your IRA being audited? Pretty small unless it's over $500,000 and went from, $10 to $100,000 in a year, right? Chances of audit, not very high. You agree with that? So sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. But this is an actual story. Makes me terribly jealous, but the Roth IRA put out $1,000 earnest money on a commercial property that they could buy for $500,000 plus acreage adjustments made it $503,000 and some odd change, right? And once they had it under contract, the reason they put it under contract is that they knew a buyer for Lowe's home improvement stores. They knew the buyer. And they had talked to this buyer and networked with this buyer and said, what do you need in a location for a new Lowe's home improvement store? And he told them. Now, most of you would think, well, that's kind of interesting. And you would do what with that information? Nothing. But when you have a self-directed IRA, if you have a piece of information, you might create a situation where you could take advantage of that information, correct? So that is what this gentleman did. He had his buddy who had a 401k plan look for a piece of property, who was a commercial broker, look for a piece of property would fit the needs of Lowe's home improvement store. Once they had it under contract, they called their new best friend, the buyer for a home improvement store, right? And they said, have we got a deal for you? And you know what? Lowe's said, that is a deal for me. So on the date of closing, I got a contract paperwork to close to buy it for $503,553.60, and paperwork to sell it that same day for $650,000. And those accounts split $146,281.40 on $1,000 earnest money. Now, don't get me wrong, this took 9 months to close, and there was lots of drama, but you get the basic idea here, correct? Okay, how about buy cheap and hold? Can you do that? How many people can buy cheap and hold here? Right? You can do that, sure. This is a real deal. I wish it was mine, but a little old lady was about to be foreclosed on in Houston for delinquent taxes. That's what we do in Texas. We sue you if you don't pay your property taxes, and we take the house. It's a tax deed state. So she was in a bit of a trouble. She was in her 80s, and she knew she needed to really move into some assisted care, but she wasn't quite ready to do so. So she was lamenting this situation, and they said, well, I'll give you the money to pay the taxes. You sell me the house for $10,000, okay, and I'll give you the money, and I'll give you the right to stay there rent-free for 2 years, right, till she could get herself situated. Now, the house was worth $0. Everybody understand that? It was worth nothing. It was a tear down. But that was her home, and she wanted to stay there as long as she could. So after the 2 years expired, he sold it to a developer for $325,000. And after all the expenses, he netted $277,925.56, and that was all tax-free forever. Now, is buy cheap, is that flipping? No, he held it for more than 2 years. Can you come up with any reason why you couldn't do that in a Roth IRA?
You don't have the money in it.
You don't have a Roth IRA, and you don't know the technique. Other than that, it's pretty easy to do. Could you do that, Augie? Could you do that? Do you want an inherited Roth now?
Yeah.
How many drinks are you going to buy me tonight?
I'm going to buy all your drinks tonight. I know where you're going.
Okay, everybody like that? How about using debt leveraging? This was mentioned before, unrelated business income tax. Now, why would you ever subject your IRA to taxation? Why would you ever do anything voluntarily that would cause your IRA to owe taxes? Why would you do that? Bob, why would you do that?
What's a timestamp on where they can't audit you anymore?
Well, what's the timestamp? Well, the timestamp is not going to run for them not being able to audit you unless you file a return. So that's not the answer.
Okay.
Why would you do it? Anybody else have an answer for that?
Why would you do?
Excellent profit.
Why would you do a transaction that would cause your IRA to owe taxes?
To make a buck.
Well, to build it, and if you can bring a big return in it and you still have to pay a big penalty, you're still building it bigger than you had it before.
Okay, you're close there.
Okay.
You said if you want to build it, sometimes you have to use some techniques that are going to be not as nice.
That's good. You get a little penalty,
Right.
but it still.
And he said a bad word, didn't he? He said you get a penalty for doing something in your IRA that causes the IRA to owe taxes, right? Are taxes a penalty? Not really, right? What they are is a reduction of your profit, right? By you sharing with the government. Is that correct?
Sharing.
You know what? The government never promised you that you could invest other people's money and make it tax-free in your IRA. They only promised you that you can make lots of money tax-free in your IRA as long as it's your IRA's money, not somebody else's money. So their theory is simply that if you make money with somebody else's money, that part of the profits we want our taxes on. The part that your IRA put in the deal, that's fine. We promised you that was tax-free. So that part's tax-free, the other part's taxable. Does that make sense? Whether you like it or not, that's the way the system works, okay? So I had a lady, and basically she had a property. She called me up, and it was under contract for $75. Now, that was not the earnest money, mind you. That was the price of the house. It was a 5,500 square foot house in downtown Houston, and it was ugly. Looked like the roof was leaking, the weeds were up to her hips, And most people would go by that house and they would go like, oh, those people, right? But what does a real estate investor do when you see a house like that? You pull over immediately and you write down the address and you try to find the owner. Am I correct? And then Walter says he doesn't do anything with that information. Well, that's what most people do. But anyway, no, she tracked down the owner, had the address in California, so she found his number and called him. Said, I'd like to buy your house. He said, okay, you can have it. He said, you can have it. He said, the taxing authority is going to take it anyway. This is my nephew's house. He was supposed to pay the taxes. He didn't do it. I don't care. You can have it. Now what do you think about it? Now, delinquent taxes, that's just like a mortgage on the property, John. Same thing. It's a debt against the property. So guess what? If you've got a property that's debt leveraged in your IRA, guess what? The IRA is going to pay taxes on the part to the extent there was not cash put in by the IRA, right? So she put it under contract, and by the time she closed with closing costs, it was cost her Roth IRA $3,036.50. Okay? And she put in a deposit of $3,040. So what does she got now, people? What does she have now? $3.50 in cash and what? And a property that on the tax rolls was worth $302,000.
Excuse me. Did
Yes?
you just say property taxes have the same effect as debt?
Delinquent property taxes do have the same effect as debt, yes, sir.
For UBIT calculations?
For UBIT calculations, yes, sir. That's why I teach this, Walter, because sometimes you have to get in the weeds. So it was on the tax rolls for $302,000. She bought it for $75. It was subject to $97,000 in delinquent taxes. So she was 97% leveraged. I didn't make those numbers up. Those are the actual numbers. She was 97% leveraged, and she had no cash to pay the taxes. So she looked for a buyer, and there was so much equity in that property that the buyer of the property got a hard money loan. Do hard money lenders make loans on property with no equity? No, they better not, right? So there was a lot of equity in this property, wasn't there?
60-something%.
And so her Roth IRA made a profit of $43,500 in 3.5 months. Only problem was it was debt leverage, right? Because of the delinquent taxes. Not current taxes, Walter, delinquent taxes. So it was delinquent taxes. So the poor IRA had to pay taxes at a very high rate because it was short-term capital gains, had to pay about $13,500 in taxes. Not the individual who owned the IRA itself. Damn, that means she only took $3,000 and in 3.5 months turned it into $33,000. Everybody say, oh. What do you guys think? Sometimes debt financing is an answer. Not always the only answer, but it is an answer that you can use. Okay. Otherwise, what if you just didn't want to do that? What if you did not want to? Okay, Augie, yes?
Instead of buying it or putting it under contract and flipping the contract and running into...
She didn't. She bought the property.
Okay, she bought the property. So instead of doing that, could she have avoided UBIT by optioning the property?
Okay, Augie, if you look at the slide, that was my next slide.
Oh, sorry. Here. Okay. Just checking.
Because do you ever have to pay taxes? Do you ever have to pay taxes, Walter, in an IRA?
For sure.
No.
No.
You never have to pay taxes in an IRA if you don't want to. 5 minutes, that's fine. Oh, come on. Aren't you all enjoying this? 5 minutes, okay. Do you have to ever pay taxes, Ross? No. You can structure around the taxes. It's like voluntary tax. Why would you do that? Well, buy subject to a loan, right? That would be, this is way to get debt leverage. I'm sorry. Buy subject to, everybody knows what subject to is. You could ask for seller financing and make it non-recourse. That's fine. You could use other people in the business, right? They would loan you other people's money. You can even get bank non-recourse financing, though it would require a down payment. There's all kinds of ways to get debt financing on property owned by IRAs. But, okay, Augie, I thought I had the right. I had the right to, so the answer is, yeah, there are ways to avoid it. One way to avoid it is to have an option on property, right, as opposed to having an ownership of property. If you have an option, you don't own it, right? That's great. You can do that. What's the problem? Somebody else has to own it. You may have to share profits. There's, somebody else involved in the deal. You could form a C corporation to own the property, and you could own the C corporation, but you might have partners that run that C corporation. They might not like the double taxation, even if you wouldn't be taxed in your IRA. There are ways to get around the tax, but everything has an issue with it, right? So you just have to do that. So they're going to force
Mr. Law,
me to...
question?
What's...
Could that be an LLC taxed as a C corp?
Yes, it could be an LLC taxed as a C corp. We'll talk more about that when I'm not under the pressure of 4 minutes to go. Owning a business in an IRA. Can your IRA own a business? Yes. Yes. Can you work in the business? No. No. Can your son or your daughter or your grandchildren or any other disqualified person work in the business? No.
What about a startup?
But can you own a business? A startup is just fine.
What about an ex-wife?
I'm not even going to answer that. So this was an example. Because really, I'm trying to help, guys, okay? I'm trying to help. I actually put $500, my HSA wisely invested $500 in a corporation, a C corporation, okay, that was a licensed mortgage broker in Texas. Licensed. The corporation was the licensed mortgage broker. That was before all the current rules. And it distributed tax-free dividends to my HSA of over $6,000, and then we shut it down because the HSA decided it didn't want to be in the business of being a mortgage broker. That's just an example. My IRA owns other businesses, but I don't have time to go into that. Joint ventures. This is my favorite idea, and I think the last one. So joint ventures. I like joint ventures because that sounds like investing, Randy, doesn't it? So let me give you an example. I could buy this person. This is an actual house, by the way. The buyer was the tenant was going to become a homeowner under Walter's program. They could buy it for $32,500 with $2,500 down and seller financing of $30,000, 7.75% interest, 80 payments, $481.36. With the taxes and insurance, it was less than they would pay for rent. Everybody got that?
80 payments?
That's what that one was. I could buy the note or notes on this deal for $30,000. That's a 30% discount. Is that a pretty good deal?
Buy it for 21.
What did I say? $30,000, well, 21, whatever. I'm trying to get through it. So now, if I did that, and what if I did a joint venture, and I say I only had $250 in my inherited Roth IRA? That's all I had to do the deal. Means I got to come up with $21,750 to buy or $20,750 to purchase the note, right? Everybody got that? So what if I found somebody that said, I just need 10% return on my money? Bob, is it easy to find somebody that wants at least just 10% on their money? Yep. What if you entered into a joint venture agreement and said, okay, you get the first 10% return on the deal. It turns out that to amortize 80 payments at 10% would take $356.41, but we have to work with $481.36. What does that mean? The other person gets, the IRA gets back, they get the rest, right? Which is $124 a month, right? Because you gave the person, the money partner, what they wanted, and whatever was left was belonging to your Roth IRA. What do you think?
I think it's awesome.
Now, this is John Heyer, and I also have thought about this. I'm not going to go into this, but you could also have preferred and common shares, membership interests of an LLC or something like that. And I don't have time to go into that. But anyway, the inherited Roth IRA is truly something that is a gift that keeps on giving. For as many as, for Sammy, 76 years after the person dies, they're still getting benefit from the inherited Roth. Now, there are many people that will tell you, financial advisors, really, who would tell you, oh, don't convert because you might be in a lower tax bracket when you retire, right? First of all, if you ever get a financial advisor tell you that, Paul, you know, you should quote the president, "You're fired." Okay, right? That was before he was president, by the way. But anyway, you should do that because that's a negative thinker. Don't you agree? Yes. I plan on being in the highest tax bracket when I retire, and I will have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in Roth IRAs. But I don't plan on not making money when I retire. In fact, I don't really work now, so. Anyway, so that is the gift that keeps on giving. And so my final thought is open one of these accounts today. I can help you with that. And there is my contact information. And I could go on and on and on and on, but I think that JB wants to quit paying the videographer a lot of money to do that. So the rest of it is unrecorded with truth serum. All right? Thank you very much.